This is Jai Sung. That day, he managed to escape from being chased by the people he had scammed. Jai Sung's talent for scamming came from his father, who was known as the Night Mist. At that time, his father was forging someone's passport named Yu Chil. Yu Chil had just stolen money amounting to 5.2 trillion won and would flee to China. When Jai Sung heard that, he was shocked, remembering that his father once said it was time for him to repent as a fraud. His father then convinced him that this was his last fraud, so he didn't need to worry about it. After that, his father immediately left to meet Yu Chil, only to be found dead in an abandoned warehouse the very next morning. Jai Sung was sure that his father had been killed, but the report from the police instead stated that his father committed suicide. Even though news spread that Yu Chil was also found dead, Jai Sung didn't believe it in the slightest. He had a very strong feeling that Yu Chil was still alive and was the one who had killed his father, so he went looking for Yu Chil to avenge his father's death. Years later, a beautiful woman named Chuja was seen in jewelry. She was trying to commit theft there, and when the shopkeeper was not looking, she started her action by exchanging the original necklace for a fake one. But unfortunately, the action was discovered by a detective named Sik-dong and Kim, who had been hunting for her for a long time. And that day, they finally succeeded in catching her. The three of them actually recognized each other. They were a gang of thieves, and what happened in the shop earlier was nothing but a part of their plan, and because of that, not only they could take the jewelry, but they were also paid for catching Chunja. On the other hand, a prosecutor named Park managed to arrest a policeman suspected of receiving a bribe for helping Yu Chil escape. Park was giving information about the police that he had just arrested when suddenly a journalist asked about Yu Chil because some rumors were saying that Yu Chil was still alive. Upon hearing that, while holding back his annoyance, Park said that he also hoped for those rumors to be true so he could catch Yu Chil with his own hands. After that, Park angrily met his superior. He openly said that he was fed up with having to keep looking for a scapegoat to cover up the case of his superiors who accepted bribes from Yu Chil, and now people became suspicious that the Yu Chil's death was just a hoax because a man named Kang Seok, one of the Yu Chil's right-hand men, was spreading rumors about a list of people who had received bribes from the Yu Chil. Feeling threatened, his superior asked him to immediately solve the problem. He was promised a very tempting position if he managed to clear off the suspicions. Park immediately went to meet Suk-dong and his thieves gang to ask for help in finding information about Kang Seok. Turned out that Park had been backing the thieves for a long time. They weren't just a random group of thieves. Kim was really Suk-dong god at computers, so it didn't take long for him to collect all the information about Kang Seok. Kang Seok was once in prison for 3 years because he was caught collaborating with Yu Chil. After that, he was involved in various types of fraud. He now worked as a housing agent. Park rushed to Kang Seok's office. Kang Seok's office looked very messy. After being interrogated, Kang Seok didn't deny that he had committed a lot of fraud, but recently, he was the victim of fraud from an old man. The story began when Kang Seok attended a house auction. He saw the old man and thought that he could be the next target of his fraud, but when the old man was about to pay the money, he went to the toilet and strangely never came out. When Kang Seok checked, the old man was no longer there. The toilet didn't have any windows, so he might have left from there without him noticing. As a result of this incident, Kang Seok felt that his pride as a fraudster had been trampled on. Based on Kang Seok's statement, Park immediately asked Kim to find out what really happened, and after monitoring the CCTV footage, it was discovered that the old man was Jai Sung. Suk-dong was shocked to see him because Jai Sung was someone who often thwarted his theft plan. Not long after, Kim managed to track down Jai Sung. Park and Suk-dong rushed to catch up with Jai Sung, and after a long chase, they managed to catch him and beat him unconscious. After he regained consciousness, Jai Sung's hands were handcuffed so he couldn't run. Seeing the chance, Suk-dong bet him up to vent his revenge, and after that, Park started interrogating him. He asked Jai Sung's reason for deceiving Kang Seok, and without even denying it, Jai Sung explained his motive that he wanted to lure Yu Chil out of his hiding. His words shocked them because as far as they knew, Yu Chil had died when he fled to China, but Jai Sung said that he saw that Yu Chil was still alive when he was in Thailand, but because he was caught spying, he was caught and beaten. Since then, he swore he would never let him alive in peace again. Not wanting to be fooled, Park immediately checked Jai Sung's background and found that he had absolutely no criminal record. He was completely clean, so when Park was gathering with the officials, he told them all about the fact that Yu Chil was still alive. Of course, this news shocked all of them. Park then revealed his plan to kill Yu Chil so that he no longer had to cover up their case. However, unexpectedly, they all strongly opposed Park's plan and instead cursed him for betraying all the effort he had put into burying their case. Annoyed because he wasn't appreciated at all, Park dragged Jai Sung to the roof of a building and was ready to push him from up there. He said that if Jai Sung managed to find Yu Chil, he wouldn't get anything. Annoyed, Jai Sung immediately told him that he wanted revenge for his father's death, and even though it didn't bring his father back, at least the person who killed his father could no longer roam freely. After hearing that, Park changed his mind. He then asked Jai Sung to cooperate. At first, Jai Sung refused, but because Park allowed him to eliminate Yu Chil after catching him, he finally agreed. The next day, they made a plan to catch Yu Chil and his gang of thieves. First, they would use Kang Seok to lure him, knowing that Yu Chil was a gold digger, so obviously, they had to lure him with money. Since Kang Seok was in prison, Jai Sung and Suk-dong pretended to cause trouble so that they would be sent to prison. Jai Sung claimed to be a casino owner while Suk-dong was his underling who had introduced him to the wrong housing agent. As they expected, Kang Seok was immediately interested in their story. Park, who was monitoring him from afar, immediately told the police officers to release him. Not long after, Jai Sung was also released and immediately went to his casino. the one he and the gang had prepared for the plan. Kang Seok secretly followed him from behind. He then deliberately bumped into Ji-sung, and at that moment he asked Jae-sung to get to know each other. Long story short, Kang Seok offered himself to be Jae-sung's real estate agent. Unfortunately, Jae-sung was no longer interested in that because he was focused on looking for a partner to run a money laundering business at his casino, and if Kang Seok was willing to be his partner, he wanted him to support him with $1 billion capital. At first, Kang Seok looked doubtful, but in the end he fell into the trap. Jae-sung deliberately asked for $1 billion because not everyone had it, and Kang Seok, who was tempted, automatically borrowed money from Do-chil, and as expected, Kang Seok immediately called Do-chil. However, feeling something was strange, Do-chil decided to send someone else to take care of it. The next day, Do-chil's underling named Mr. Kwak came to Jae-sung's casino. Jae-sung was happy to show him around. He didn't even hesitate to show off his stash to Mr. Kwak, but instead of believing it, Mr. Kwak thought that he was a fraud. Instead of continuing to convince Mr. Kwak, Jae-sung chose to leave him. He then met Park and his gang of thieves. He reasoned that he was forced to do it because he was afraid that his cover would be discovered. They were forced to revise their plan. Jae-sung asked Chunja to seduce Mr. Kwak so she could steal his apartment key. After that, Kim would install hidden cameras all over the rooms. Meanwhile, Jae-sung planned to go to Thailand, while Seok-dong was assigned to issue an article containing information that Do-chil was still alive. On the other side, Park, who was just arrived at work, was suddenly confronted by a reporter named Choi. Choi kept asking for the reason behind the release of Kang Seok. Disturbed by the reporter's question, at that very moment, Park threw him out of his office. After that, Park asked his subordinate to find out what Choi was doing. That night, Chunja was alone with Mr. Kwak when she deliberately turned on the TV, and right at that moment a news broadcast appeared that stated that Do-chil was strongly suspected to be alive. Mr. Kwak immediately jumped in shock and then hurriedly called Do-chil on the phone. Do-chil asked Mr. Kwak to meet him because he was now in Korea. Park, who heard the conversation, was suddenly shocked when he found out. Chunja didn't remain silent. She then followed Mr. Kwak from behind. Park also went to follow him while Kim was busy monitoring the location. Sure enough, Mr. Kwak was face to face with Do-chil. Without wasting any time, Park immediately chased him, but unfortunately, Park failed to catch him. Because of that incident, Park was annoyed to the top, and in the middle of his annoyance, Park got a call from his subordinate who said that reporter Choi was actually meeting with Jae-sung. This was completely beyond his expectations, but when he saw the photo evidence, he could no longer hold back his anger. Meanwhile, Jae-sung met with reporter Choi to discuss further the list of people who have received bribes from Do-chil and how shocked Jae-sung was when he found out that Park also kept the documents. When Jae-sung and Park met again, Park pretended not to know that Jae-sung had betrayed him. He then gave Jae-sung a gun to finish off Do-chil, who was still in Korea, but Jae-sung refused because he still wanted to kill Do-chil with his own hands, so Park secretly told Seok-dong to eliminate Jae-sung, and in return, he would release him as his prisoner. A day later, Jae-sung and the others followed Mr. Kwak's car, who would soon meet Do-chil and Incheon. When they arrived at the location, Jae-sung and Seok-dong immediately moved, but strangely, Park told them to retreat, and that was when Seok-dong hit Jae-sung in the face until he fainted. When Jae-sung regained consciousness, he was angry at Park for what he had done earlier. Park didn't do that without a reason. He was furious because Jae-sung had lied to him. Fortunately, he didn't tell Seok-dong to kill him. Hearing that, Jae-sung was honest with his true intentions. He didn't just want to finish off Do-chil, but also everyone on the list. Mr. Kwak returned to meet Jae-sung following Do-chil's orders. He assigned Jae-sung to launder 300 billion won. But as a deposit, he would give a check of 30 billion won first, while the remaining 270 billion won would follow after the process was complete. After receiving the offer, Jae-sung informed Park that he was willing to accept the offer from Mr. Kwak if Park gave him the list of names who received bribes from Do-chil, and later, the 30 billion won could be all given to him. Of course, Park immediately agreed. Jae-sung handed the 30 billion won check to Park, and according to the agreement, Jae-sung got the list of names he asked for, which he later sent to reporter Choi to be published in the news. After the news was published, all the officials involved panicked, and due to this incident, Park got a stern reprimand from his superiors. That night, Jae-sung received a call from Mr. Kwak because his condition threatened that he needed the 30 billion won by the next day and promised to hand over a check for 270 billion won to Jae-sung. Park, who also heard the conversation, immediately racked his brains to get 30 billion won in the shortest possible time. There was no other choice but for him to threaten the officials that if they didn't give him the bribe money from Do-chil, he would make sure they would be jailed. Afraid of that threat, they quickly gave the money. The next day, Jae-sung gave 30 billion won in cash to Mr. Kwak, while Mr. Kwak would give the remaining 270 billion won in the form of a check. After getting the check, Jae-sung immediately gave it to Park, who immediately cashed the check as he planned to keep the money for himself. A moment later, Park gathered Jae-sung and his gang of thieves in a warehouse. That day was the day to execute Do-chil, but suddenly, Jae-sung, Chunja, and Kim were arrested. It was then revealed that Park was the one who ordered Jae-sung's father to falsify Do-chil's passport. He had also been investigating Jae-sung secretly. He already knew Jae-sung's real plan thanks to Seok-dong, who had stolen the data that had been collected by Ji-sung. After that, Seok-dong and Park's men were ordered to kill Jae-sung, Chunja, and Kim. Shortly after, Park was informed that the check he wanted to cash turned out to be a fake check. This then made Park furious. At the same time Mr. Kwak and Do-chil met. Park ordered his men to arrest the two. But how shocked Park was to find out that Du Chil was Ji Sung in disguise. Turned out that everything that had happened so far was Ji Sung's genius plan. When he was held captive by Du Chil in Thailand, he found out that it was not Du Chil who killed his father but Park. All the calls related to Du Chil were also Ji Sung's voice, which he had changed. Even the one Park saw on the cable car was not Du Chil but Ji Sung. Stick Dong and Mr. Quack turned out to be working with Ji Sung. Stick Dong was a sibling of someone who killed himself after Du Chil took his money, the same that happened to Mr. Quack's wife. They were all victims of Du Chil's actions. They then united to get rid of everyone related to Fu Chil, and Park was one of them who had the biggest influence on Du Chil's success in fleeing to China. It wasn't long before Chunja came along with one of Park's corrupt superiors. He cried and begged for forgiveness and promised to arrest Du Chil if he was given the chance to be free. However, it was too late because the police had surrounded them. There was even a hidden camera that streamed all the events that had just happened. Enough as evidence to put Park and all the corrupt officials behind bars. After all that happened, Ji Sung and his friends got a jackpot of 30 billion won that Mr. Quack took. The next mission they had to do was to hunt for Du Chil, who still roamed somewhere.